All right. I believe we are live. I think we are. Well, someone drop me a comment and let me know if you can hear my voice. I'm not 100% certain that we're live, but I think we are. Um, how's it going, everyone? I hope everyone's having a great day. Today we're talking about fudging dice. This is a very spicy take. Already there's been a lot of conversation about this in the Discord. I'm going to double check here and make sure that I'm still live. Make sure we're still looking good on the stream. I think we're good. Harad. All right. Yeah, we're good to go. All right. So, sound great. Excellent. Thank you so much, Sketchosaurus Rex. I appreciate that. All right. We have Sketchosaurus Rex in the channel. We have Hot Dice in the channel. Welcome, guys. We have Drew and Dragons in the channel. Great to see you. Robert is here. Hey, Robert, how's it going? Robert Luttrell and Robert H. are both here. Jason is here. Hello, everyone. We have Mr. Dirty Socks. Hey, Dirty Socks, how's it going? One of the counselors in the GM Philosophy Discord. By the way, if you want to join the GM Philosophy Discord, link is in the pinned comment and in the description. We have Herminator in the house. How's it going, Herminator? And we have Robert Evans. Superfly Rob, how's it going? It's great to see all of you. Thank you so much for joining me. Garrick is here as well. How's it going, Garrick? Juberstan is here. What up? I think Juberstan and Garrick are here every single day, and I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the support, everyone. Now, I'm going to warn you, today I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. I woke up with like a cold, and I feel a little achy, so I'm going to try to bring the energy, but you may have to bring the energy. You may have to make your comments so spicy that it livens me up and gets me rolling. I've already taken my my Tylenol and I ate my orange for breakfast, so hopefully the vitamin C will kick in and help me. But all right, let's dive into this conversation about fudging dice rolls. Okay, so there were a couple comments in the Discord. And the way we do this, for those of you who may be new to the stream, is we talk about these topics in the Discord before we come to the live. And then when we come to the live, we discuss the ideas shared in the Discord. And I also share the ideas posed in the chat, gather the collective wisdom of the chat to discuss the topic. And I would like to discuss kind of my 2 cents on this. Okay, here is what I think about fudging dice rolls for me personally. There are times when I do it. I don't really like to do it. I usually only do it if I feel like, this is going to sound weird, I only do it in situations that are not extremely pivotal. So that's one thing. But they are important, so they're kind of important. And then I only do it if a certain thing would just be so perfect that if the player didn't succeed, it would just be, I feel like, a detriment to the game. And this doesn't happen very often. This happens maybe once per session, if ever. And usually I will only fudge it if it's slightly off. Like, for example, let's say that they need a DC 14, but they don't know what the DC is, and they roll a 13. I'll do a quick little think to myself, and I'll roll a dice while I'm thinking, and then I'll say, you barely made it. Barely. Right? So that's like the majority of the fudging I do. If it's a really important thing, like for example, they're coming up and they have 1 hit point and they're attacking the big bad, there's no way I'm going to fudge that. We're going to roll all of those dice right out in the open so that everyone knows what's going on, because I think that fudging dice in really, really important, crucial, conflict moments takes away from the player's ability to tell a story. That's personally my take on it. All right, so Sketchosaurus Rex says, if the scene matters that much, the outcome should only be a boon or bane. I don't know that I disagree, actually. I don't know that I completely disagree. I have to think about that for just a second. Stephen Lewis says, I don't fudge rolls, but monsters' HP is flexible. That is fair. In defense, we are talking about fudging dice rolls specifically. I'm going to share some of these thoughts from the Discord. All right, we got some great thoughts. John Haney was the first one to share his thoughts. Another counselor from the GM Philosophy Discord. I fudge dice on rare occasions, usually when I've overestimated a monster's ability to hit the party. This can happen pretty easily with minion hordes if you're not careful, but if there's no threat, the combat is meaningless. So I up the ante after a couple rounds if they're just not hitting, even with the decent rolls. Strictly speaking, I don't actually fudge the dice rolls. I just bump the monsters to hit modifier by 1 or 2. So it's more like improvisational encounter design than true dice fudging. That's what John Haney said. Jupersten says, I agree with you 110% there, Jim Philosopher. I've only fudged dice for stuff that's not important to related to anything, e.g. someone missed an attack by 1 or something relative to that. Okay. Let's see here. There was a couple. The chat started off really coming right out the gate. Sketchosaurus Rex said, explain how. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That wasn't even the first one. Sketchosaurus Rex said, no, no fudging ever. Why cheat your players? And then Hot Dice said, because sometimes not fudging can cheat your players out of fun. And then Sketchosaurus Rex says, explain. They random chance, and those outcomes are the fun. So that's what Sketchosaurus Rex said. Drew and Dragon says, I've been told by players I have been a slave to the dice, but I feel like our job as DMs is to be almost like a scryer. These bones we roll are trying to tell a story as much as I or the players. So I take that to mean, Drew and Dragons, that we should honor the dice's decisions, which I do not altogether disagree with. I only disagree with that in very, very small very small situations, and I always honor crits and fails. They are basically a religion for me. They are the word of the gods that a thing should go very well or very badly. I always honor them, and I try to make them as good or as bad as I think the situation calls for, plus like maybe 10%. Let's see here. What do we got? Jubersten says, just about took a break this past weekend, Thursday and Friday included, due to time with family, but I try every day. I think that you mean like for playing D&D. Robert H. says, lol, I was just in the middle of trying to record that challenge that Dirty Socks proposed in the Discord. So people were doing stuff. Never mind. Okay, so let's see. Jubersten said that. We already talked about that. Garrick says, I fudged dice in combat 2 to 3 times years ago when the party was brand new to prevent TPWs, not in the years since. So Garrick is a strict no fudge dice roller, it sounds like. Kay said, if the players have to succeed to pass, I won't even let them roll as long as they tell me a solution that works. Oh, so Kay, it sounds like you don't even require a roll necessarily if they come up with the right solution. Drew and Dragon says, always going to have exceptions to the rules. No doubt about that. Whispering Wisp says, late but here. How's it going, Whispering Wisp? Jubersten says, nah, I meant that for when you said, me and Garrick have been here almost every video. Oh, okay. Yes, you have been here, I think, almost every video. At least that I can remember in more recent memory. All right, let's talk about what Connor, son of John, said. Which, by the way, I really like that name, that Discord name. Connor, son of John. Isn't that a reference to Terminator? I'm pretty sure. Which reminded me, I should watch the Terminator movies again because I love Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's like legit one of my favorite people. I usually end up doing that as well, especially since I roll most of my dice in front of players. Especially running primarily on a VTT, you can't fudge the number in front of the players unless you are hiding your rolls. Oh, I'm sorry. This was a response to John Haney's comment about I fudge dice on rare occasions, but usually when he's overestimated the monster's abilities. And Connor, son of John, is saying that they agree. It does force you to stick to that number for the rest of the combat, unless you give a reason for the hit modifier to change for some reason. Hostile Intent said, I like fudge and I like dice rolls. I do not often mix the two. I hope this helps. Garrick says, fudge, says the 30-year diabetic. In small doses, I can partake. Dr. Fibe says, fudge. Sorry, I'm on a diet, although it looks delightful. I would like some actual fudge right now. I had an Oreo cookie earlier, but I feel like I should cut back on the sugar because I am feeling quite under the weather. Here is what Jason says. Don't fudge the dice. Make sure they fall in a great way. Let the players embrace the failure. It can create great moments in the game. I do agree with you, and sometimes the greatest moments come from players just rolling terribly and failing at the thing. Sometimes it creates the most epic moments. I remember one time I was running a game and there was a monk who got attacked with Phantasmal Killer. Do you guys remember that 3rd edition spell? Phantasmal Killer was like the worst insta-kill spell because it was like you trying to create basically a phantasm of their deepest fear, and they have to fail a wisdom save to fall for the illusion, and then they also have to fail a con save to get hit by the spell. So it's like an insta-kill, but it's hard because they get 2 saves against it. And this monk had like such high, like he had such high saves. And in fact, the wizards they were fighting, I like looked at their spells and I was like, well, all he has is Phantasmal Killer. He's going to try to cast it at you. It's not going to work, but you see him try to start it. And then he's like, okay, I'll make my rolls. And then he rolled on his wisdom save, fumbled. Oh, wow. You do see the illusion of your deepest fear. And then he's like, okay, I just have to make my con. Basically, he had to like just roll like a 3 or better or something like that. And then he rolled fumble, nat 1 again. And everyone was like, the monk just got killed. At that time, he was like a level 18. It's like the level 18 monk just got killed by Phantasmal Killer. And he did get killed. He had to be resurrected. It was a wild, it was like a super memorable moment. Because it's like that spell, the odds of that spell killing him were so low. But he did, he died from it. Sketchosaurus Rex says, if a dice roll is required, you must be willing to accept the outcomes of success or failure. I need to make a video on an epic fail for that spell. Connor Johnson says, I am a reference to Terminator. I love it. I love it. Juberstan says, Sketchosaurus, I agree, but only so much. If it's relative to something important, absolutely don't fudge the dice. Let the RNG gods determine the outcome. But if I see a player not doing too well, I tend to fudge 1 or 2 rolls in their favor so they have more fun. So that's actually what Juberstan just said is kind of like, okay, so I can identify with that. So let's say that there's a player. I had one of these situations in a combat not too long ago where there like a bunch of demons were attacking the party, and the warlock of the party was having like an especially bad time. Like she just kept rolling bad rolls, and like just the way her character was positioned, she got hit really early on. Like it was a feel bad. It was actually a complete feel bad combat for her character, who usually hits really hard in combat, but because of the way things rolled out, she just didn't do very well. And I found myself like thinking, man, I want to throw her some kind of like little opportunity or a little something to like kind of redeem herself in this combat, because her character just because of just like random bad luck is just getting demolished out here. And so there was a little role play scene that was really fun and that I think engaged the player. But I kind of agree with you, Jubersten, that I like to think about like if they're having a terrible time, maybe it's time to intervene a tiny bit, like if things are going especially bad for that character. But it has to be like, it has to look legitimate. It cannot look like you're pitying them. Otherwise, that feels actually worse. And I think Sketchosaurus Rex's basically statements are leading in the direction of like, no, cheating dice rolls makes it worse for the players. It's like not realistic. It takes power away from them, which in that case, I would agree. It's a feel bad moment to have the dice fudged in your favor. And you know that. Like, that feels kind of bad. All right. Let's see here. Connor Johnson says, as for how I do dice fudging at home, I roll behind a screen for anything that I would fudge. But when something feels important or the combat is getting heated, I'll stand up and start rolling dice at the table. That way, everyone knows whatever happens, it is what the dice decided. Basically taking the kid gloves off and making sure everyone knows it. I like this. Yeah, that's very relatable. I've done that as well. Kay says, I'll fudge like crazy if the random mundane encounter is going badly. Nobody wants to die to the 2d6 wolves that randomly attack the party. Sometimes the party just rolls terribly. That's understandable, I feel like. I one time had this like wild encounter where the group, they were like fighting dragons and necromancers, and they ended up like in the woods, and there was this random a direwolf encounter that I did not plan going badly, and it went so badly, and the wolves took down like 3 of the high level party members, and I just remember thinking, what in the world? They just steamrolled a bunch of like not like zombies and dragons, but these wolves came in and just for some reason just tore them up. It was kind of a feel bad moment, but it was kind of fun. And I did not fudge any dice in that combat, hence why the wolves tore them up. Sketchosaurus says, give them some advantage on terrain or tactics. I agree. Robert Evans says, as a DM, you almost have to leave room for failure so that the successes are more epic, and it's about balance. I would agree. And that, I think, is a cornerstone of what makes TTRPGs fun. It wouldn't be fun if all the time every hit was a crit and you were steamrolling everything. It would not be fun. The ups and downs and the conflict are what make it fun. Hot Dice says, my version consists mostly of fake dice rolls, I guess you can call it. I have narrative beats that I will ask for an opposed check, but the bad guy was always going to do the thing. Okay. So I know sometimes I like instinctively know what the bad guys are going to do, but sometimes if I'm at all unsure, I'll roll a 20-sider and I think to myself, towards the 1, it's like a bad reaction. Toward the 20, it's a positive reaction because I don't actually know how they're going to react, and then I'll use that to guide it. Yeah, that's just a little thing I do. Jubersten says, anything outside of combat, I don't fudge dice. I'll roll in front of everyone so they know that this is important. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Like on those skill forge crafting checks, you got yeah, they've got to roll success or they don't get the armor. Hot Dice says maybe a nat 20 gives them a minor success. Maybe, hopefully. If someone rolls a nat 20 when I'm trying to determine direction for the NPC, it's like very good. Or a nat 1 is like terrible. It's like they pull out a wand and start blasting, right? It's like really bad or something. Whispering Wisp says, hero luck advantage tokens tend to help with cold dice, but if they are really cold, it feels like it breaks the immersion. Sometimes it does, especially if you notice your players getting like actually real life bummed out. I don't feel like I get real life bummed out when my character performs badly when I play, but some players do. Connor Johnson says, also, dice fudging as a whole kind of feels like a subset of making things harder or easier for a group. It is like a hot fix where altering tactics can also scale up or down the difficulty. That's actually, I mean, that's literally true. Hot Dice said, ask for perception checks when there's nothing, etc., etc. Sometimes that's a tactic. You ask for perception, roll me a perception check. They roll a 12. And it's like, never mind. You don't see anything. And then they're like, they're convinced there's something to see, which is kind of fun. It's like a funny bit of drama. Juberstan says, what's up, Whispering Wisp? Jason says, open rolls are always fun. I agree. Sketchosaurus Rex says, if you have to fudge dice rolls, you're bad at running the game. Ooh, Sketchosaurus is dropping absolute statement. You know what they say? Only a Sith deals in absolutes, Anakin. That was General Kenobi who said that. Iskandar the Great says, one of my favorite features of the game IDM is that the setting is rough. One of my PCs died last night and we play on a VTT, so I roll in the open. In the end, none of the players blamed me for it. As they shouldn't. If it's the dice, it's the dice. They could blame you if you're like being mean to them and you sent them like awful, like you sent them in at level 3 to fight a Tarrasque and the door closed behind them. That would be mean, unless it's some kind of like wild setup for something awesome. But yeah, no, they should take it in stride, and sometimes those things happen, and it's part of the story. The GM is just there to facilitate. It's not a GM versus player thing. Juberstan says, oh, absolutely. With the armor, LMAO, if they roll bad, hey, you get some bad armor. There's a big old hole in that armor right about there. But arrows could come through it. It's for collecting, reloading arrows for your own bow. I put it there as a feature. It's going to cost you 3 gold extra. Robert Evans says, I ditched the screen a decade ago. I was a player in a game and the DM was caught fudging rolls during a combat. Everyone at the table felt cheated. The game didn't last after that. Okay. I was a player in a game and the DM was caught fudging dice rolls. See, that feels bad. It does feel bad. It feels really bad. It feels like you're being not... How can I put this? I think you'd call it coddling. It kind of feels disrespectful a little bit. It feels a little bit like, so you have to be very careful about that. Very careful. Volkai says, for new players, I might fudge a roll to make sure the game stays interesting, and having some flexibility can be helpful while they're learning. For my experienced players, I may not even use a DM screen. It's punishment for those players. Awa's Arc says, some folks play to feel good. Some play to be challenged. Fudge is experienced differently by both groups. That's true. When I play to create a story, like when I'm a player. So for me, I don't want to be fudged. My character might die. And it's like, that is the end of their tale. You know, I'm not trying to get them killed, but if I'm running like a character who has bad habits or makes some bad choices, death is a possibility. Robert says, Rex with the truth of the matter at hand. Yeah. I don't necessarily. So, Sketchosaurus Rex is right about the, fudging rolls feels bad for players. And then Sketchosaurus Rex dropped that banger of, if you have to fudge dice rolls, you're bad at running the game. So it went like another level, right? So funny. I like it. I like it. I think that I don't know that I would agree. What makes a GM bad at running the game? If a GM was constantly fudging dice rolls in front of me, and I caught them, I would say, you are bad at running the game. But if I was playing a game and I didn't know they were fudging some dice rolls, and I felt like a pretty good ratio of success to failure, I wouldn't overthink it. I wouldn't think to myself, did they fudge that? Like, that's not something I worry about. So I don't know if that means that they'd be a bad GM. Maybe it's more about hiding it when you do it. Robert Evans says, I'm sorry, I already read that. Kay says, this is largely about making it easier, but what about fudging dice to make a combat harder? Like if the BBEG is turning out to be a pushover, or fudging HP. okay, you monster. Who's going to come in here? You roll a 3 for BG to attack. You give the side eye. 23 plus its bonus. Did that hit? No, but in all seriousness, actually, I don't disagree with you, and I see what you're saying. And sometimes you gotta up those. Sometimes you gotta up those numbers. Sometimes that big bad has one more attack than you planned on because you realize the 2 attacks per turn ain't gonna cut it, and so they whip out a maneuver, and it does a little magic damage, and they shoot a little fire. And then the players are like, what was that? And you're like, you don't know. It was a secret technique. Maybe he learned it at the monk monastery. Maybe he might be a spellcaster. Roll on your next turn. Use your action to roll an Arcana check. See if you can study it. No. I have to do my attack. You have to wait till later then, I guess. Cognizant says, I only fudge when I use some untested homebrew creature. Robert Evans, so untested homebrew creature. I would be less likely to fudge on that because it's like if it just mangles them, then it's like, well, it's dangerous. If it gets mangled, it's like, whatever. It's just a creature. It's just an encounter. They steamrolled it. It happens. I'd be way more likely to fudge something like they're making a persuasion check or like a deception check. And it's like they should succeed, but for some reason they rolled extra terrible and it's only like 1 off. Like that's the kind of situation I would probably be more likely to fudge it in. Robert Evans says, in my opinion, the DM player relationship is about trust. Without trust, what's the point? I know it sounds squishy. I don't disagree with you, Robert. It is about trust. Connor Johnson says, I think modifying a monster at the table is by and large fine. Just because the monster is on the table doesn't mean the monster design has to stop. I agree with you, actually, Connor Johnson, and I don't think the players need to know that. In fact, I think it's better if you don't say anything about it. If they're like, let me see that stat block. Like, I think that's a rude thing. That's a rude thing for a player to say, actually, high key. Like, if I had a GM who's running a monster and they were using some abilities and I thought to myself, are they fudging abilities or are they adding abilities? I would never ask them, let me see that stat block. Like I would never, ever do that because I think it's just rude. It's straight up rude. Garrick says, since those early days, I've had a reinforcement group not appear or an extra reinforcement appear. That's true too. Sometimes reinforcements come at the perfect time. Sometimes the enemies get reinforcements right in the nick of time. Kay says, assuming you're okay with fudging, how would you handle a player fudging their rolls? So I had this wild situation one time where I was playing D&D with this dude for a long time. He played for a whole epic level campaign with me. And toward the second half of the campaign, he started cheating on his dice rolls. And it was very obvious. In fact, me and a couple of the other players were like, he is cheating on his dice rolls because he rolled just like an exorbitant number of nat 20s. Like he would constantly be rolling nat 20s. And here's what would happen. I would say, okay, roll this, roll that, roll this. And then he would be like, can I attack with my, my sneak attack? He was a rogue. And I said, yeah, go for it. He's like, I already rolled. I got a nat 20. And he would like point to his dice. And at first I was like, oh, cool. Because I'm usually chill about those kinds of things. But then it happened and happened and happened and happened. So I ended up making an announcement and basically telling the whole group, I'm making a new rule. I have to see your dice rolls and they only count after I tell you to make them. And all of a sudden it was just like magic. The number of natural 20s he rolled just really, really diminished to a significant degree. It was wild. Wild story. This same player also used to play Commander with us, like Magic the Gathering, and every single game, first turn play, it would be like, what was it? It would be like Soul Ring, and then into, what was it? There's another mana rock that he was running. He's running like a 2-drop mana rock. I can't remember. But anyway, so it was like Soul Ring, and then mana rock, and then another mana rock. So he had like this perfect opening hand all time. And we all started to be like, that guy is cheating. He's literally stacking his deck. So we started making this rule. Other people have to shuffle your deck and then cut it before. So we all pass our decks to the left. Everyone shuffles and cuts. And then we pass it to the right. And then we start the game. And all of a sudden, just like magic, he stopped top decking Soul Ring every game. But anyway, I think it's gross when players cheat on dice rolls. I would never want to cheat on dice roll. I don't want to fudge that. I think it's gross. Volkoi, Soul Ring into Mana Crypt into Mana Vault. That I don't think he had a Mana Vault, but he might have Mana Crypt. He might have had a Mana Crypt. I can't actually remember. Connor Johnson says, a player doing it is a no-go for me. They aren't the person managing the game. I did have one player I had to talk to about it. He was also using a spin down, so it was a double whammy. So that's another thing too, is spin down counters. There's like people rolling on their phones. I used to have players who I was pretty sure they would be rolling on their phone and they would like tell me the number, but like it was way better than it should have been very often. And so I've made rules about no digital devices at the table before because of that. It's kind of gross, man. It's kind of gross. Connor Johnson says, you need the spell pierce's Soul Ring every time. I agree. Jubersten says, see, for Commander, I always find it to be different. None is following a story, so I feel fudging cards or counters is cheating. But again, that's just my opinion. No, I agree with you that it's cheating. I also feel like it's cheating in D&D, though, when you fudge your dice rolls. I really do feel like it's cheating, and it feels kind of gross. In my opinion, it just feels kind of gross. It feels disrespectful to the GM. It kind of feels that way. Because in theory, the only reason the GM would fudge the dice is to make a better experience for the player, unless they're a jerk. And then they're like, you know what, I'm mad. That player, his face bothers me. You know what? Extra 10 points or whatever, right? It's like, I don't think that happens very often. Sketchosaurus Rex says, fudging is cheating. Be brave enough to fail. I agree. Hunt Dice says, kid did that to me on Spell Table a couple months ago. Turn 2 win. Oh, it's gross. Robert says, pre-rolls must have a cup, like Yahtzee, and not be touched after that. Players that cheat are just as bad as when DMs cheat. Yeah, I agree. I think that for a GM, I don't know if I would always call fudging dice cheating, though, because it's usually done in the spirit of trying to aid the story. And so to me, it's just, I don't know if I would call every GM who fudges dice rolls a cheater. I just don't know that I would do that. I kind of feel like it's more gray than that. It's more morally gray. I think Sketchosaurus Rex would disagree with me. And to be honest, he has a solid case to be. I have to make a few philosophical allowances to make that statement, and I know it. Jason says, if you need to create a rule to prevent a player from if you need to create a rule to prevent a player from cheating, then it's time for that player to leave the group. So, Jason, I agree with you, and nowadays, that is exactly what I would do. Back then, I was a little younger and a little dumber. I was a little younger and just a little dumber, but I agree with you. If they're cheating, what's the point? Jubersten says, if someone soul rings into 3 mana rocks, I usually just say it's good game. I'll continue playing, but I know they've already won. Probably, honestly. Unless you're gonna overload that Psych Rift. What? Wubble up a dub dub. That's one of my favorite moves in Magic the Gathering, is to overload Psych Rift in like late game Commander and then go in with my big win, like whatever that is. But that's like one of my favorite bread and butter like board wipes. So gross, so nasty. And you have a handful of counter spells to stop people from stopping you. Jubersten says, on the player's end, yes, if the GM lets you re-roll, needs you to pass a check or something, I feel it's unnecessary for them to roll. Just allow whatever it is to pass, but make their character feel it. I don't disagree with that. You can totally do that. Kay says, I feel like the big difference is whether you vote D&D as a game or as a story. That's valid. Hot Dice says, what is legendary resistance other than fudging? Yeah, that's true, but it's an ability. It's like a specific ability that's doing it. I think that's what makes it legitimate in the eyes of the law. Iskandar the Great says players that cheat are the same as DMs that do the horror story railroading. Yes, I do agree. And if there's going to be railroading, it has to be agreed on beforehand. It has to be discussed in session 0. It's like there's a very specific plot. Are you guys interested in following it? Yes or no? That needs to be discussed before, because there are some types of games that do have like a very central plot and it works better if the players follow it, but not everyone's into that. So shabam on that. Pyroblast, yeah. Yes. Sketchosaurus Rex knows what's up. He knows how to play dirty. He knows how to play dirty and mean. Let's see here. Jubersten says, as in, if the player rolls anything low besides a 1, let them get the check, but then add something got into your eyes, but miraculously you're able to spot. Get the check, but you add, okay, so in other words, something bad happens, but they still succeed. That's true. You can totally do that. It's actually a good tactic. They succeed, but with a downside. Connor Johnson says, I think you have to look at the job of a GM and the job of a player to make that determination. A GM puts a story in front of everyone and makes sure the players have fun. Hopefully, I would agree. Robert Evans says, ugh, card nerds. All love, no hate. I do miss playing some Commander. I have not played a game of Commander in probably, it's been maybe 8 months since I played a game of Commander because I don't have time. Connor Johnson says, a player has a character sheet that uses numbers and dice as a way to interact in that world and story. Yes, that is true. And messing with that does mess with immersion. It certainly does. Jubersten says, freaking Pyroblast, bro. Yeah. You must play artifact decks. Robert Evans says, the game is both a game and a story. It is, yes. Hot Dice says, lol, government sanctioned fudge. That's exactly what I'm saying. Government sanctioned. Jubersten says, what the guy from Terminator said. That's right there in the shiz. That right there is the shiz. Okay. Sorry, guys, I can't read very well. This writing is a little tiny. Robert Evans says, shabam. Stephen Meta's in the house. How's it going, Stephen? Hello, my friend. Hello. And with that being said, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up. I think we have covered this really well. Thank you all for talking to me today. Hey, I was feeling pretty crummy when I woke up this morning, and this conversation has really been fun, made me laugh. Stephen Meta, yes, we were talking about Commander. We were talking about how your favorite move is to overload Psychrift in late game, right before you make your final assault. That's what we were saying, basically. Jubersten says, I've played artifact decks, and I totally have had salty games with Pyroblast. Pyroblast is a salty card. With that being said, I believe it is inferior to Psychrift because it is a sorcery speed spell. Unless, am I wrong about that? I'm pretty sure I'm correct about that. That's why I was never as big a fan of Pyroblast, because I love instant speed stuff. That's why Rout is an awesome board wipe. I love Rout. But anyway. Thank you all so much, and you guys have cheered me up and made me feel honestly a lot better and give me a lot of energy. I'm going to try to work for a couple more hours, and I'm afraid I may have to go to sleep. But heck yeah, I will catch you all later, and thank you for the coffee break, and I will talk soon, guys.